Welcome back to the HIT podcast. My name is James Leighton, CEO and founder of Andersen James. This is the podcast where I bring you real life stories from some of the most interesting leaders of our sector. We want to discuss the big challenges that are facing UK housing today. Today, I was delighted to be joined by Lee Sale, Regional Managing Director of Lovell Partnerships. Lee discusses his leadership journey to date and how he became one of the youngest directors for a PLC house builder at the age of 33. We talk about how we inspire the next generation of talent and how Lovell's hybrid model of delivery has really accelerated their growth. I hope you get loads and loads of value from the podcast. And if you do, I'd ask that you could share this podcast so that we can reach as many people as possible. Please like and subscribe. I hope you enjoy the show. Lee, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Brilliant. Other than the hay fever, as we've just been discussing offline, I'm feeling all
right.
right.
Well, we're all right. Other than that, Monday, back at it.
So, just like for the purpose of the listeners, could you just give us an overview of your time so far in the sector?
Yeah. So, I'm unbelievably to me entering my 30th year in this in this game. I kicked off as a chain lad on a construction site at 18 whilst doing a part-time construction management degree. And it was all about the big stuff for me then. So I come from a family of sort of hands people, if you like. So miners and got all out of Stoke. So it was all about getting stuck in and starting work. I managed to get a ticket with Shepherd Construction as a chain lad very early on in my career. And then really progressed on through the HMV, ONC, HND route, and through to getting an opportunity with the great poaching empire in the younger years. And that's really where my sort of heading into a managerial position started. And lots to take from those younger years working in a construction business that was very agile in the poaching group. So we would be building things big as a 500,000 square foot warehouse for Tesco or a multi-story residential tower in the middle of a city. So that sort of challenge and agility of working at poaching was what really drove me on towards wanting to get more into that residential sector. And I fortunately, through some good breeding, if you like, in my family. As you know, my uncle Neil Goodwin is one of the longest serving, probably most successful MDs for Barratt Manchester in the region, and my older brother Sean, who spent 20 years as an operational leader on many boards of regional house builders. So that breeding was there, and I was sort of starting to smell that, and got an opportunity at Bellway to go in there, looking after their special projects. So what that was to Bellway back then was residential medium to high rise builds, which was really my skill set back then. And we did some great stuff in and around the cities, and then that grew into a wider opportunity then to go and have a look at the wider leadership role for Bellway, which were then growing into a 700 unit house building business. And I think with that breeding, and this comes back to, so hopefully some stuff we'll talk about around taking a chance on people. By no means had I, at the age of 30, got the experience to become what was then one of the youngest directors in the Northwest.
During my prep for this, I saw that you were the youngest director at 33 that had been in the Northwest of Bellway. I found an article on it. So why? I suppose to cut in a little bit, why do you think that was? How did you get such quick progression? I'm sure people listening will want to understand sort of what did you do different to your peers at that particular moment in time?
I think there was a definite desire piece there. I think to be fair to the board at Bellway at that time, who they were and still are in many respects a very hungry business that was always about growth, that was always about putting the right people in the right places to drive businesses forward. And that certainly that business back then was set up like that, and it certainly is still now. Driving growth through driving businesses forward and having the individuals with that mindset. And my mindset back then, as a young sort of 30-year-old, was very much to progress. And I had that high level of energy that you need to sort of refocus at a young age, 20 odd live sites, building 700 units of low and medium rise a year. So yeah, took an opportunity on me really. And what always happens that I quite like seeing today is when you take an opportunity on somebody that's probably not got the experience that you would like to put them in that role. Usually what people do is work really hard to show you that they can do that role. And that was certainly the next 10 years of my life, trying to deliver on that promise of somebody taking a chance on me.
And what were the difficulties, like looking back at that moment in time, so 33 to say 40, that period of your life? What were the challenges that you faced? Like, how did you get the respect of your teams?
Yeah.
How did you manage to motivate and inspire people being so young?
So that was the biggest challenge, and in an industry, if you think about where the industry was really back then, it was a very difficult industry to break down, where you are dealing and managing people with more experience than yourself. You've got to do it in a certain way, and certainly the sort of brash way of sort of motoring over people with 30, 40 years experience in front of you clearly wasn't going to be the way. So the way I went about that is the way I still go about business today, is getting down to the level of the people that you're dealing with, casting a strong leadership shadow. So do your business the way that you want people to do theirs, and make sure you give them respect. And that isn't about knowing it all, because clearly at that age I didn't know it all. But what I got was a strong attitude to work ethic, professionalism, and just being honest with people about where it was I saw us heading, and making sure that we were well prepared. And in an operational role, of that sort of volume, that was clearly about being prepared. It was about all the things it still is today: design, supply chain, and having the right bums on seats, and making sure that we were bringing the right people through the business at the right time. So I could argue that not a lot has changed in sort of that leadership mentality. Obviously, you learn and you gain the experience as you grow, which I hadn't got then. And I dropped some balls, James. Being honest, I didn't get everything right. But and this is again something bringing it to today. Through my career, I've made mistakes, and fortunately, I've been in businesses that have not been businesses that have poked and prodded at those mistakes, but give you a kick up the bum and off you go again. And that's certainly my mentality that I've brought into today's world, really. We make mistakes, but certainly the team around my board table here and previous positions will tell you, it's all about us, not me or not you. And, driving that mentality and showing that to your employees, I think, is really important, because what you don't want people is being frightened of making mistakes. What you want them to have is the energy to think differently and think outside the box, because you make mistakes when you're pushing hard and thinking outside of the box, and that you've got to drive that sort of mentality, really.
Yeah, and if you were to advise, and I'm sure you do in your teams at the moment, a person at that level or at that age that are coming through at the moment, what advice would you give to them? You talked about work ethic and commitment, etc. Anything else that you can think of that people can really start to think about if they're looking to progress? Because I think when we look at our business at the moment, I'd say 70% of the reason people move jobs at the moment is for progression, because they want to progress to that next stage. And typically speaking, there's a reason they're not progressing in their current organization. What generally do you see, or what comes up for you when you think about that, and advice you could give to the next generation wanting to come through?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the piece about moving on and churn first, working in a people-focused business and doing I've got an acid test that I've had all of my career that says, when I wake up in the morning, am I excited about going to work, or am I not? And I think if you're working in a business where you don't feel that you're in an environment where you're supported, that you're having fun, that you feel that you can express yourself in, I think that is a business that isn't really a people-focused business, and that you don't get the respect that you need to grow. And certainly something we are instilling here at Lovell, and it's a real base culture and value of Lovell, is having that very open environment with line managers, and people can express themselves in any way that they want to. Because, we're at work a long time, James, aren't we? It's hard work, and we want people to enjoy themselves. That doesn't mean it's a youth club. What it means is that we've got a real strong plan, and we're asking people to work hard to deliver that. But don't kill yourself. Just make sure you've got the right team and you've got the right tools around you to deliver it. So I would say to our young people, and we've been doing this very fresh. We've just done a graduate recruitment pool for our new management trainees coming through, and what we're saying to them is, look, our anticipation of what you're going to bring to the business is new ideas, wide lenses, thinking outside of the box, because we've got a lot of people in the business with all the experience we need to get into the day-to-day, and that's what we want our grads to bring to it: fun, new ideas, test our thinking on all things, and do that through a junior board that we're going to set up, and just bring those great ideas to us, but have fun while you're doing it. And because I think one of the challenges that we've got with providing the talent for the future of growth of our sector is attracting young people into it. Because as we know, the attraction at the moment is IT, it's everything but bricks and mortar, and there's a lot of attraction out there. So one of the biggest challenges we've got is making the house building and construction and built environment sector attractive to young people. And that doesn't mean that what you're doing as in coming into this sector is putting a high vis on and a hat and you're standing out in the freezing cold all day, because we know, it's a lot wider than that. Yep. We've got lots of technical functions that support what we do, as well as the day-to-day house building, people that we need. So for me, it's giving people a sort of wide remit to bring to us new ideas on what is a very a sector that's built on what it was 50 years ago in many respects. In many respects, what we do in the house building sector hasn't moved on a great deal. We put new IT in, but we're still putting 4 walls and a roof on houses and building them in a certain amount of time. It's not rocket science, but what's come with today's world is we have to do that very safely. We have to do it in excellent quality, and we have to be very professional about how we deliver all those aspects of house building these days. So it's challenging. That is where I want our younger people to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think we've got to go into the younger generations as well, because I did recently a talk at Derby College and there was no one there. There was 5 or 6 people there. So the reality is we've got to get into the earlier years careers and the earlier classroom and really start to inspire people at a younger age, because generally what I see is that a lot of the trainees that occupy our market, their dad's a joiner or a plumber or work in the sector, etc.
Absolutely. And that's just the stereotypical people that we would have walking through the door that is only going to fulfill so much of our growth in the sector. We've got to attract, and early careers is you mentioned there, early careers is something that we are focused on now at Lovell in terms of going into those secondary college and school locations to sell what not just about Lovell but the industry per se. What does it look like for the young, and just trying to gain a momentum really and get ahead of the Amazons of the world in terms of where we attract people into get working life.
Yeah, 100%. And what I've seen an uptick of is when we talk about diversity and inclusion as well, the only way we're going to fix that from a house building sector is by bringing through new trainees, etc. And it's recently we've been looking at it from our perspective, and there's more female site managers than I've ever seen before. There's more females occupying senior management and leadership roles, which is great to see. But we've still got a long way to go as a sector, because clearly a lot of the board of directors, there's a lot of males in the industry, and it's something that we've got to work really hard at the early years part. So moving on from sort of Bellway young director, one thing that you mentioned is making a lot of mistakes. What were the common mistakes that come up for you when you think about things that you would do at that age that you would probably do differently now?
I think probably the main one is when you're in a fast-paced, moving environment, especially in our sector. It's always very easy to get ahead of the game with really site progression and starting. And in the older days, we used to be able to kick off sites, get on site, not over worry about planning and pre-commencement conditions and all the things that we're wrapped up with today that stop us doing any of that. And what tends to happen with those things, as we learned the harsh lesson of back then, you run onto a site when you're ill prepared, you're not procured, your planning's not in place, and all of those risks that you take to ensure that you can hit the volume and your numbers for the year, it only ends up eating you back up as you get into the scheme, because you then get stopped, you're then in delay, and all of those things. So I think in those years, one of the big learnings that I got to from many years of trying to push on ahead of the game was tighten up your governance, ensure that your pre-start process is excellent, and what you'll get there is a proper operational start. And where we ended up getting to in my younger years was being a bit loose around all of those things, to where we developed as a business a sign-off protocol that said that we would have procurement on any one of our new sites up to roof by a certain stage. All the construction phase drawings would be there, and we would have pre-commencement conditions signed off before we even put a road and sewer foot in the ground. And that was a difficult change in the environment at that time, because it was a very, I'd be being pushed from my MD to kick off a site within minutes of buying it and all of that good stuff. So it wasn't just a process change. That was a challenge for me from a leadership perspective, to really push back at peers to say, look, this is penny wise, pound foolish, and this will deliver for us. And that took, let me say, many years to get people on side with that. But when I look at where we are today, we wouldn't dream of operationally starting a scheme without all of that due diligence and governance in place. And now what we see is very professional starts. It also plays its way back into quality and safety really well, because when you're rushing and you're unprepared, you're probably not safe. So, our environment today in the sector, as everybody knows, certainly in where I sit today, to be a 5-star builder, you have to have all of that operational excellence in place in terms of process, because from start, cradle to grave, if you're not planned well, whether that be customer safety or whatever that may be, quality, you'll get unpicked very, very quickly. And that really, that's all about governance for me. So governance is something that has been a learned trait for me. And I learned a lot of my governance trait from my 10 years with the Waits Group. So Waits were and are, if you like, my conscience, and regained my conscience around governance and professionalism. And that I learned a lot of that governance trait there, and that stood me in very good stead, I'll be honest. And because it was such a deep incision into that group, where the gateways of governance were managed very stiffly, commercially and operationally, it brought you on, and you learned those traits as a leader at Waits around governance, and that was a real base there around operational excellence. So I brought a lot into where I am today, from sort of a younger years of really strong, hit it hard operational delivery 10 years, through a very sort of rounding governance professionalism 10 years, which leads you on to your sort of heading into your 30th year with all of that behind you, thinking about where my head is today in today's environment, which is around have an excellent plan and excellent people, and you've got half a chance of having a great business.
That's interesting, and I suppose it takes us nicely into Lovell. You'd sort of done both sides of the fence, hadn't you? You'd done the contracting piece with Waits, and you'd done the open market stuff with Bellway at the time. And I suppose, is it right of me to describe Lovell as a bit of a hybrid of the two, almost?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%, and thus the reason why I found this opportunity very attractive.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that agility is what we're all about here. Being very agile, and it's interesting that if I look back 10 or 15 years at the companies that were around then, with all of the agility that we see here today, a lot of those companies aren't there anymore, and that was what was attractive to me. That I saw a tightening of the market for house builder, contractor, developer, which is where we sit, and being very agile across taking open market sales risk, land purchase, and the full house building piece, to be able to look over here and deliver high volume pace schemes for RPs and councils and all of the great stuff that we do, multi-tenure work for others. But having the people and the skill set and the team to be able to ebb and flow a business plan across those two assets, and that is pretty much where we're at today, and that's our strength. That we've got a business plan that's agile. That if the market turned tomorrow, which it isn't going to do, and on the open market side, we have the agility to turn the business with it, and so forth on the opposite side. If the contracting and RP and council piece turn tomorrow, we look further this way. So I think that was certainly the attraction to me. The agility, the bench strength of the business that I saw, we could certainly develop into where we are today, sort of 3 years in, a business that's punching over 100 million now, 500 unit a year house building business, 5-star builder. All of those elements that 3 years ago when I landed, I looked in here and said, we can be all of these things in the market capture that's available to us in the Northwest. And a lot of people looked back then at where we were sat, then being a £50 million business, a 2-star builder, all of those things. But we and I saw that there was definitely room to grow, and we're in a great place that we're at today.
Yeah, and I mean, it'd be remiss of me not to mention it. How did you find the COVID situation? Because you were probably in a good flow then, and I must be honest, I remember having a conversation with you back in the beginning of that, and we said, wow, is this going to be the next 2008, 9, 10 era for our businesses? And actually it's not panned out that way. But what did you learn about Lovell, your business, your leadership team in that time, and what's been good about that, other than obviously the terrible health consequences and the stress on the NHS, etc. But for a business, what did you learn from that period?
Well, I'll tell you the big thing I learned, that I learned that my view when we had that conversation very early on was absolutely 100% wrong, and where the industry was going to go. In that, I don't think any of us were, if we'd have looked back now and thought at that time, did we see a market that was going to increase in terms of its demand for new homes? People having, many people having disposable income because of the way that they're living for the last 2 years, wanting to move because they were working at home and finding a great work-life balance, work-home balance at home, so therefore buying a new home or moving home, and creating this enormous demand on the house building sector that we're seeing today. Even, post Help to Buy falling away and a lot of the government incentives, we're still seeing demand for our open market sales way in excess of where we were pre-COVID. Now, if I'd have thought that back then, or even come out of my mouth back then, people would have thought I was crazy. So I'm gobsmacked, I'll be honest, with where the industry's gone. It's all good, and we've got to ensure that when we're looking forward, though, is that we've got one eye on what is a great market, but one eye on my concern, which is this inflationary supply and demand scenario that's out there at the moment. And what's also pushing against that is that all of our competition in the sector is oversold their first half of the year, like us. They're probably well sold for the full year. And what that means is that the supply is probably going to be tightened even further through the back of the year, but the demand is continuing to grow. So that inflationary demand for housing is probably only going to get stronger through the rest of this year. So I think that feels all great from a sector perspective. We just got to be very careful that doesn't overheat completely in terms of house prices go through the roof and just becomes unaffordable, because that's another key base for us, supplying affordable housing and delivering on affordability on all of our schemes. So affordable additionality, we may go onto a site with 30% affordable, and we might want to deliver another 20% with our partner because we want to provide that affordable additionality. So we're really concerned that inflationary piece doesn't unpick our strategy, which I'm sure it won't, because we've got the agility to flex. But just for the Joe Public who wants to buy an affordable home, we just got to make sure that does remain affordable.
Yeah, and on that front, I suppose, and one thing you mentioned there about affordability. One thing that I think Lovell do amazingly well is that collaboration piece. And I think if we are going to see ourselves come out of this housing crisis and create enough homes that are affordable to, people that want to get on the ladder for the first time, it's going to be imperative that we create some strategic partnerships. That seems like something you've done really well. Could you just give us a flavour of sort of some of them partnerships, how they work, and just, I was looking in the notes of, you've got THT, you've got Together Housing, Taurus, Riverside, Your Housing, got a number of strategic partnerships in that. What does that mean for Lovell, and what does that mean for the affordability marketplace?
Yeah. So I suppose this is the base of our business model, really. So that agility piece that I was talking about, because we're agile, we can step into these key strategic relationships, partnerships with all of our great partners. And you mentioned a few: Clarion, Trafford, Compendium, Together, Your Housing, all of those great partners of ours. All those relationships are all very different as well. That's the interesting thing, that they're all slightly different. So what we'll do in some of those partnerships is that we will go and buy greenfield land throughout the Northwest and develop and put capital and expenditure into a joint venture relationship and take risk and reward together. And so that will be acting as a developer partner. In some of those relationships, we will just be contracting and delivering high pace, high quality contracting for our partners, whilst we may bring land to that partnership as well, but we wouldn't necessarily do that through an open market joint venture. We will have relationships like Compendium that's getting on for 20 years old, where we will deliver estate regeneration and community infill projects around the Northwest, where we will both bring land and opportunities to those. But in general, I suppose when you look across those strategic relationships, whatever they are, James, what they're about is relationships and partnerships, and that's what we are all about here. It's all about cutting through the technical aspects of business and what we do. We push ourselves to drive long-standing repeat business relationships, and we do that through people and making sure that the connections that we make are pretty much like any relationship or marriage, really. We get to know people, we make promises, and what we love to do is come back to those promises and measure them through the lifetime of the projects and those JVs, because I think that's what's really important. We set out big aspirations for these partnerships at the outset. But what's key for us and key for our partners is that when what we said and what we did at the end of these relationships or through the life of them is what it's all about, really. It's for us to report like on the social aspects, from a social value perspective. A key part of what we do at Lovell is over delivering on social value. So we'll produce a set of social accounts on every project that we deliver, and we'll measure those back to our key JV partners for us to see, what great things have we delivered, not just homes and for new people, but what else did we deliver in the community. That's really important to us, and that's where our partnerships base for 50 years now has been driven from. We're celebrating 50 years of partnerships this year, and I suppose that says it all, really. We've been at the partnerships piece a long time, and what we try and create is a great environment for people to work with us.
Yeah.
and share some of our culture and value. And that's the key to a great relationship. That it isn't just a one job win. That we build relationships over time and we grow into them. Just like if you like our regeneration workload, that's all about seeing tomorrow. That's what regeneration's all about. What does it look like today, and how do we create tomorrow? So creating places and creating new communities, which very much is what we're all about.
Yeah, and one of those things that I see a lot in Manchester, and if I got £1 for every time someone asked me, can I get them a viewing at Miles Platin, then I'd be a rich man. But that feels like a major regeneration project. Like, how did that come about, and where are you up to on that project? Because it feels like a mega one right on our doorstep of where our office is.
Well, it's interesting at Miles Platin, and unlike a number of our key long-term regeneration projects around Manchester, that they are long-term. But what's interesting is through the years of all of those 10, 20-year regeneration projects, at times they were stalled. We were considering offering cells back to the city because we couldn't sell, because there was no take-up, because the market just didn't see a market in Miles Platin or Beswick or wherever, or Langley or Middleton or whatever we're developing. But when you look at where we are today on all of those long-term regeneration projects, I mean, when you look at Miles Platin today and where it was 10 or 15 years ago, it is a true long-term regeneration project. It's amazing. We've got many cells still to deliver there. The demand is enormous, but we are creating place at Miles Platin now. Yep. And when you look at some of the cells along the canal frontage there now, it does. We have created a new place there, and that's regeneration, and that's why we love looking at tomorrow in everything that we do. So lots of the new regeneration schemes that we're going to be starting over the next 12 months and 2 years with various different partners, including Compendium in a couple of locations. We're working on what tomorrow looks like, not what today is. But the fruits of those is we're creating great communities, but we have to invest in them, like we did at Miles Platin. We had to invest heavily at Miles Platin to create what we have today.
Yeah, and that just outside city centre living is very popular, isn't it, right now?
Massively,
really popular.
Massively, because you like 2 or 3 of our long-term regen schemes around the edge of the city. You can see the city from some of these sites, so you're in touching distance of the city, but you're not paying £500,000 for an apartment. What you pay? Well, I mean, you're still paying over £300 a foot now in Miles Platin and other places. But in terms of you can walk to the city, it's very attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of challenges that I'm hearing about all the time in the market at the moment, and to talk about some of these is, the one thing I thought that would happen during COVID is I thought the availability of land would get easier, and it's definitely not got easier, has it? No. But what's your view on land and planning, that whole piece around actually procuring sites and then taking those sites through planning? How's Lovell finding that? What's your general feel in the marketplace around those areas?
I think that, to be absolutely honest, James, I think the whole planning piece is secondary to the hot market issue that we've got now. The planning piece has been there for a long time. I don't see it getting any easier. And to be honest, we can do the best we can with that and have the right professionals, the right consultants and in-house teams to deliver that as best we can. The big issue in the sector is at the moment is an overheated land market. The supply and demand piece is there again. GMSF having limited supply coming into the market. So what's happening now is being really honest about it, where we would be looking as Lovell in secondary locations around the northwest, bringing stuff forward, doing some remediation, demolition, and this piece around seeing tomorrow in some of these opportunities. What we would be maybe one of 2 or 3 that would enter into those sort of postcodes and locations. What we're seeing now is everybody's looking at them, and everybody wants a piece of that. And those markets that we would consider £200 a foot markets are now £280 a foot markets, or to £300 a foot markets. And so not only is that driving land value, it's making the competitiveness of everything that's coming to the market now absolutely brutal. And It's difficult, and we are, what we have to do though is react to that. And so we in our agility, we have the opportunity to bid with partners.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to bid in certain land offers in terms of payment terms and the way that we will go about that, which is attractive to some vendors, not all. So we've got to use all our tools to be able to keep with the pace of the land market when you're trying to replace, delivering a 500 unit house building business, which is difficult.
Yeah, and have you seen the vendor piece? It used to be a lot around social value and what would happen within the community of those pieces of land. Is it price driven now, or is there still a little bit of that going on?
We're seeing the majority of competitive bids. So if it's a competition and it's council led, or some government body is into it somewhere, we will always see 50% quality, 50% price, because that's just the procurement OG route that we would have to take. Clearly, on private land acquisition through private vendors, it's all price led. And we're seeing bidding wars going on now, where you get through to the last three and it's your best offer in an envelope type scenario, and it's gone absolutely crackers. But what's also rubbing against that is, as the next piece of this, I suppose, we're in a very hot market where we are trying to pick up land that we know, coming back to your planning piece, we won't get to site for 2 years. Yeah. That's the reality. So you're looking at trying to buy a site at the top of the market, knowing today you're not going to be on for 2 years hence, and therefore what happens with cost? Is cost today's money? Is it 2 years' money? Well, it has to be, because when you see the inflationary issue around cost that we're seeing at the moment, we're having to price that cost into our land bidding. But what we can't do, which is very risky, is price a lot of that revenue growth into schemes, because it's just not what we do. We are today's value and we're today's price, but it's very, very difficult to get a foot on the ladder in a hot market when we used to be able to, just use what is, current value, current cost to pick up land. So that whole inflationary cost piece, the heat of the market and planning all together are the difficulties within our sector, full stop, right now.
And how important is it for you to have such a big group of businesses behind you? Because clearly, is that a big player when you're looking at buying big bits of land? Is it important to have that cash? I mean, it's well documented that Morgan Sindall are cash rich from a business perspective, or does that sometimes go the other way because they know that Morgan Sindall and Lovell are coming in for a piece of land, therefore they'll pay top dollar for it?
We don't see that. I mean, we see our group's bench strength to be an absolute asset to us. Yeah. The group is probably outperforming the market in many ways at the moment. Our cash is good. So we see that as an absolute strength. And when we talk to vendors and partners about our group's strength, they see that as a massive asset. And where if we're putting money on the table that's approved by board and group, they know it's there. And so it is a real benefit to us. And we utilise that, and we push that bench strength every opportunity that we've got. Why wouldn't we? The group is performing exceptionally well at the moment.
Yeah, no, I see that. And the other challenge that I'm hearing a lot around is materials. Same thing, overheating of the market, or what's your view on how we fix that long term?
I've got a little bit of a different view on this. There is some overheating of the market. And I've probably got this view because I'm trying to talk the market down in price as well. But I have got a view that the market is hot, and that's demand related. And I get that a lot of our product is coming from overseas, and a lot of that is baked in. There's also there's an opportunity to be had here as well, and increasing price and increasing material price across the sector. So we've just got to be very close to that and ensure that what we're not doing is we're not allowing suppliers to build more into this than there is. But my gut is that at the end of 2021, that's going to flatten out and plateau in terms of the supply piece is going to get itself back to where it should be by the end of this year. So our sort of view is at the moment that come the end of 2021, we'll see that spiking of material and supply chain piece plateauing out, and it needs to, because it's very aggressive at the moment and we're working hard to try and soak that up. Fortunately, on the open market side, we're seeing growth in pricing, which is helping us do that. But if we hadn't got that growth in pricing, that would be a problem to us. So that's where we're at. We see the end of this year that sort of plateauing out. But we're seeing on timber alone, if you were to use an example, sort of price hikes of 14% on timber,
Wow.
which is just
And
crazy.
have you had to change many of your sites to accommodate that, bricks, timber, etc.? Have you had to think about how you will deliver your schemes within different materials?
100%. So we review that on a monthly basis. So on all of our new starts, generally when we're delivering at pace, and when I say delivering at pace, I mean that we are planning to build at a pace of more than one a week, if you like, notionally. We will always build with timber kit. So timber frame will be our optimum pace of delivery. Yeah. The issue that we've got right now with that is that timber prices are hedging well above where masonry prices are hedging. So we may have to we're rethinking some of that to come back to a masonry build, which is why I think that lots will be doing that, and therefore the demand for timber will see that reaction and may then correct itself sooner than we think it will do. So yes, we are. We're reviewing our timber stroke masonry piece on a monthly basis.
Okay, fair enough. And I mean, just going into the future a little bit, what do you see your plans for growth, and where do you see Lovell nationally, but more regionally? Where do you see the opportunities for growth?
So for us regionally, it's market sector grab really. With our agility and as we talked about before, being agile across the open market, contracting, partner and JV sector, we see ourselves really well positioned in the region to deliver more of that better. Is where we're at. It isn't about, our strategy is very simple. It's not about changing the world. It's not about new sectors and doing things differently. It's about really putting our bench strength into growth, which and we can see the market ahead of us. So we've just submitted our 5-year plan to the business, which sees very, very strong growth over the next 5 years. Let's just put it that way. And we honestly see that our market capture, looking at the partnering opportunities that we have in front of us, the land opportunities that we're now bedding in for 2023, we can definitely see that growth coming. But it's in the same sectors. What we're not trying to do is be clever about what we're doing. It's about just doing more better of what we have. The key challenge that we have to all of that, James, is the talent pool. And it's about growing a business sustainably. But one of the big challenges that we keep talking about, and rightly so, how do we grow and continue to grow, but retain the great culture and values that we have in the business that stood the business in great stead? And what we've got to make sure is that our recruitment piece absolutely aligns to that. And it's not just about the next person. It's making sure that we onboard really well, that we ensure that we have the right level and quality of line management, and that our succession plan is really strong. And one of the things that we're going through in some detail at the moment is putting a real sense of rigor around our succession planning. And if I'm being honest, through COVID, there's been lots of other things on our mind over the last 2 years, but what we're coming back to now is getting back into that good old, really close look at our talent pool. Where's our succession going to come from? Because it all can't come externally. We know that. And we've got to work really, really hard to make sure that the leaders of tomorrow, really, for Lovell, are pretty much within these 4 walls, if you like. We've got to develop that talent and invest in it. And we see that as our biggest challenge, really, making sure that the quality of people to deliver on our growth for the future is there and in front of us, because there's a tight market out there, as you well know.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose if you were to be advising government at the moment, when we look at the housing crisis and wanting to create more homes, and we're behind on all the targets, as everyone knows, what could they do? What's the one thing they could do to really change the dynamic in the market, would you say? What's the one thing that they should spend some time on trying to change?
I think there's a number of things. Some of these are controversial. You may say they're all controversial, but the clear gateways to growth and speed in the market are do we feel that a modular off-site build is the right thing to be building hundreds of thousands of in the UK over the next 10 or 20 years? I'm still not convinced that it is, but it is a problem solver to some of that, but not all. I think that creating place with what we have in the market off-site at the moment certainly isn't the right way to go, but that will develop, and that will develop into homes that look and feel as they are today, but off-site. I think that's a big challenge that we're working alongside with various different supply chain and others to provide our own view on that. Planning is key. The whole green belt to brownfield piece is fundamental to this. That, you know, there's only so much brownfield land that we can develop on, and we've got to get really smart around how we deliver the greenfield opportunities without creating place that just doesn't feel like anything other than a city centre suburb, and that's a big challenge, and that's a big challenge both from a climate perspective. We're very close to delivering on what our carbon neutrality piece is going to look like for the future, and we're very conscious that that's not just about whether we're fitting hydrogen boilers and ground source heat pumps, but it's about the communities and places that we're creating, and that is about how much land take is available to us to do that, but provide green space and green sways through these communities that we're delivering. So I think there's a big challenge in front of us. If we're going to exponentially increase the pace of delivery for affordable homes in the UK, it's got to be part to do with offsite. We've got to partially look at how we create the green belt land that's opportunistic, that doesn't cause issues with overcrowding suburbs. And we've got to resolve the amount of supply chain, quality supply chain there is in the industry to deliver it. And that's a big challenge as well, because as we know, that's been under pressure pre-COVID and for the last few years, really, since 2008, where a lot of people in the industry ran off to do other things. We've still been on this cycle of creating quality supply chain and people to deliver the future, and that's just at today's standards. So moving that on forward, there's a number of key challenges, which you know, I honestly think there's an answer to most of those, but attracting talent and supply chain into the sector is probably one of the key ones.
I totally agree. And in terms of, I suppose, to finish off, what's the prediction for you next 3 years? I mean, we got the prediction wrong over COVID, but what's the prediction for the next couple of years, would you say, in the housing market?
I think you know, if I was to sort of generalize it, I think that the demand piece will retain its current levels through at least the middle of 22. And I'm saying that only because we've got this lag of demand that remains in the market that's all driven by, if you like, the lack of supply that's there. And I don't see that lack of supply really altering in the next 12 months, because we've got a shortage of material that's actually working against that supply at the moment, because it's slowing us down, and that's only going to expedite that issue. So I see probably another 12 months of only delivering the supply that's in the market right now and not over delivering. Therefore, I think the demand for new homes will retain for at least another 12 months. Beyond that, James, I think what's likely is that the market will settle back down to pre-COVID demand and supply, and therefore hopefully the inflationary piece will calm down, material prices and shortages will flatten out, and what we'll get back to is pre-COVID sales pace and pre-COVID build pace. So you'll probably see the market at the back end of 22 settle back down to where it was pre-COVID. That would be where I was, but I got it completely wrong at the start, and I might get it completely wrong at the end. That would be, and that's based off what I see today in the business.
Yeah, of course. And just in terms of people reaching out to you, are you happy for people to sort of send you a message on LinkedIn if they have any questions on the back of the podcast? Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. So we talk to a lot of people, as you know already, but absolutely, yeah, let's discuss, because these issues aren't just mine, they're everybody's. Yeah, agree. Great to have you on the show, mate. Thanks for everything.
Great to see you.
Take care. See you later. Ciao.
See you soon.